money when you still have slums and like crazy amounts of homeless people and people who die because they can't get healthcare? Like, what's the point? Rich people can be well off, like nice. I don't think this is a good argument.
Socialism requires a totalitarian level of government intervention to regulate every aspect of society. Capitalism does not. The historic record of Marxist philosophies is clear. They do not work and merely produce the highest levels of autocracy, censorship, social unrest, poverty, and starvation on the planet.
Social unrest? When was this crazy social unrest? Like, do you mean the Cultural Revolution? That's like the only thing I can think of. So, well, excuse us for putting people in control. Well, my bad. Starvation, implying capitalist Russia didn't have famines constantly, implying capitalist China didn't have famines constantly until these dirty economies showed up and put an end to the famines. Like, implying capitalist Africa isn't chronically starving all the time. Like, you know, there was a time when this small, underdeveloped African country, which used to be a colony of a capitalist country, used to be a colony of the French. It was a small, starving, undeveloped country. One of the poorest in Africa, in fact. It was called the Republic of Upper Volta. And then this communist, this Marxist guy named Thomas Sankara came to power in this shitty, small, like, starving African country. And they changed the name of the country to Burkina Faso. And he was in power for 4 years until the French had a guy assassinate him and restore the old order. But during this 4-year period, Burkina Faso actually became food self-sufficient. So don't give me this shit about famine and starvation. It's precisely because of capitalism that these countries are starving. Still, there's more food than there's people who eat the food. There is more than enough food. It is a question of distribution, and it is a question of profit and what makes sense for the capitalists. If this underdeveloped, starving African country can become food self-sufficient in a meager 4 years, then that kind of makes you think, like, why is Africa and why are all these other places still starving? It is not because of some kind of necessary law of nature, like Africa must always starve.
Let's see how this stream sounds. Sounds okay. I'm streaming some Fortnite, Molly. Yeah. I turn it down if that sounds better. Yeah, I think I like that better. Mute licensed audio. It just played some, but we took it out. should be good for next time. Okay, this stream sounds okay. This is scary. Oh no. Okay, higher. There we go. Chopper. Fun if I do, I'll take that as well.
It's like the last season. I thought it was a new season.
Thought this was a new season?
No, I thought there was a new season.
I think it is a new season. They just kept this building, but see, there's no guy in here that you fight. Remember that guy? It's not in here. That's two. I'm gonna turn this down a little bit more. I guess it's this one. I'll turn it down to like 11. Let's see if that sounds better. I can't see my audio in this one, but whatever. Hopefully that works. I think that's a little more manageable. Let's shoot some and see. Yeah, that doesn't sound quite so awful loud. Okay, well, I'm going with that. Back to listening to interesting stuff.
Developed starving African country can become food self-sufficient in a meager 4 years. Then that kind of makes you think, like, why is Africa and why are all these other places still starving? It is not because of some kind of necessary law of nature, like Africa must always starve. No, it is a question of politics.
They just haven't had enough capitalism
and under
yet.
capitalism, these issues can never be solved. This guy, he claims that Marxism is a historical failure, that it just collapsed to its own impossibility.
China is
That
a
just
historical
demonstrates
failure.
his own ignorance. There was a Cold War. where the capitalist countries allied together to destroy the socialist countries. And finally they succeeded. Through military intervention, military arms race, economic blockade, propaganda war, and everything else. They finally succeeded for the most part. Of course, there's still like some remnants of the socialist world left. Socialism was such a historical success that all these socialist countries, China, Russia, whatnot, they used to be incredibly poor third world countries who nobody really cared about. People laughed at them. Then when they became socialists, suddenly they became world superpowers. That doesn't imply success to you. The Soviet Union, after the Second World War, emerged as a more powerful country economically and militarily than almost all the previous capitalist superpowers. It emerged as more powerful than France, more powerful than Germany, the UK, Japan, all these other major capitalist players. The success of socialism was so immense that the imperialists, the capitalists, they stopped caring about inter-imperialist rivalry. Remember the First World War, when it was two major capitalist alliances against each other, like the Turks and the Japanese and the Russians and the French and the Germans and the British and the Americans all killing each other, trying to steal each other's things. And then the Second World War, when it was Germany and Italy and Japan and Spain versus the UK and France and Poland and the US. And then the Soviet Union was one player in that war. That all changed. The capitalists, they were like, all they cared about after that was the Soviet Union. They're like, yeah, who the fuck cares about what Japan wants to do? Who cares what the UK wants to do or what the French want to do? We care about what the Soviets want to do. Like, it's now one massive alliance of every capitalist country versus the Soviet Union and the countries allied to that. Soviet Union was seen as the biggest threat to imperialist world hegemony. Like, isn't that a strange situation? Like, historically, the British have always been concerned about the French. Like, they've been competing with the French. And the US has always been competing with European powers and with Japan. Not anymore with the Soviet Union. They were like, yeah, we can work with these European powers. The Soviet Union, that's like really the biggest competitor. So if socialism is so unsuccessful, then how could it even compete with capitalism the way it did? I smell something fishy about your argument. It's almost as if you don't know what you're actually talking about.
Where'd they go? I don't know. There he is. Gotta be a guy. Let's just get out of the storm first. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a look inside my mind. I like to use Voice Reader to read audiobooks. I like the robot voice because it helps me concentrate on what's being said. But I've been wanting to read about the fourth turning here lately. It calls the millennials were the next great hero generation, like the GI generation. Everybody will make fun of us until we fix everything. Born in the middle of the crisis. So let's see. This is what I was listening to.
Wherever we're headed, America is evolving in ways most of us don't like or understand. Individually focused yet collectively adrift, we wonder if we're heading toward a waterfall. Are we? ITs all happen before the reward of the historian is to locate patterns that recur over time and to discover the natural rhythms of social experience. In fact, at the core of modern history lies this remarkable pattern. Over the past 5 centuries, Anglo-American society has entered a new era, a new turning, every 2 decades or so. At the start of each turning, people change how they feel about themselves, the culture, the nation, and the future. Turnings come in cycles of 4. Each cycle spans the length of a long human life, roughly 80 to 100 years, a unit of time the ancients called the seculum. To Together, the four turnings of the seculum comprise history's seasonal rhythm of growth, maturation, entropy, and destruction. At the first turning is a high, an upbeat era of strengthening institutions and weakening individualism, when a new civic order implants and the old values regime decays. Registered, the second turning is an awakening, a passionate era of spiritual upheaval, when the civic order comes under attack from a new values regime. Registered, the third turning is an unraveling, a downcast era of strengthening individualism and weakening institutions, when the old civic order decays and a new values regime implants. Registered, the fourth turning is a crisis, a decisive era of secular upheaval,
2008.
when the values regime propels the replacement of the old civic order with a new one. Each turning comes with its own identifiable mood. Always.
What was the boomers? Progressive era would be the first. What came after the GI generation? That wasn't the boomers. What was it? An awakening. It's like the Great Awakening. No, I think the boomers were the awakening. Yeah. Then this go round. GI, boomers, Gen X, millennials is the crisis.
Always, these mood shifts catch people by surprise. In the current seculum, the first turning was the American high of the Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy presidencies. As World War II wound down, no one predicted that America would soon become so confident and institutionally muscular, yet so conformist and spiritually complacent. But that's what happened. The second turning was the consciousness revolution, stretching from the campus revolts of the mid-1960s to the tax revolts of the early 1980s. Before John Kennedy was assassinated, no one predicted that America was about to enter an era of personal liberation and cross a cultural divide that would separate anything thought or said after from anything thought or said before. But that's what happened. The third turning has been the culture wars, an era that began with Reagan's mid-1980s morning in America and is due to expire around the middle of the 00 decade, 8 or 10 years from now. Amid the glitz of the earlier Reagan years, no one predicted that the nation was entering an era of national drift and institutional decay.
In 99,
But that's where
97.
we are. Have major national mood shifts like this ever before happened? Yes, many times.
Kind of called
Have
2008.
Americans ever before experienced anything like the current attitude of unraveling? Yes, many times, over the centuries. People in their 80s can remember an earlier mood that was much like today's. They can recall the years between Armistice Day, 1918, and the Great Crash of 1929. Euphoria over a global military triumph was painfully short-lived. Earlier, optimism about a progressive future gave way to a jazz-age nihilism and a pervasive cynicism about high ideals. Bosses swaggered in immigrant ghettos,
Gen
the
X
KKK in
and
the
the
South,
jazz
the
age.
Mafia in the industrial heartland, and defenders of Americanism in myriad middle towns. Unions atrophied, government weakened, third parties were the rage, and a dynamic marketplace ushered in new consumer technologies, autos, radios, phones, jukeboxes, vending machines, that made life feel newly complicated and frenetic. The risky pleasures of a lost young generation shocked middle-aged decency crusaders, many of them tired radicals who were then moralizing against the detritus of the mauve decade of their youth, the 1890s. Opinions polarized around no-compromise cultural issues like drugs, family, and decency. Meanwhile, parents strove to protect the scout-like new generation of children, who aged into today's senior citizens. Back then, the details were different, but the underlying mood resembled what Americans feel today. Listen to Walter Lippmann, writing during World War I. We are unsettled to the very roots of our being. There isn't a human relation, whether of parent or child, husband and wife, worker and employer, that doesn't move in a strange situation. We are not used to a complicated civilization, We don't know how to behave when personal contact and eternal authority have disappeared. There are no precedents to guide us, no wisdom that was not meant for a
I
simpler
deserve
age.
to die. That was horrible.
Backward again to an era recalled by the oldest Americans still alive when today's seniors were little children. In the late 1840s and early 1850s, America drifted into a foul new mood. The hugely popular Mexican War had just ended in a stirring triumph, but the hussars over territorial gain didn't last long. Cities grew mean and politics hateful. Immigration surged, financial speculation boomed, and railroads and cotton exports released powerful new market forces that destabilized communities.
AI.
Having run out of answers, the two major parties, Whigs and Democrats, were slowly disintegrating. A righteous debate over slavery's westward expansion erupted between so-called Southrons and abolitionists, many of them middle-aged spiritualists who in the more euphoric 1830s and 1840s had dabbled in transcendentalism, utopian commune, and other assorted youth-fired crusades. Colleges went begging for students as a brazen young generation hustled west to pan for gold and towns fabled for their violence. Meanwhile, a child generation grew up with a new regimentation that startled European visitors who, a decade earlier, had bemoaned the wildness of American kids. Sound familiar? Run the clock back the length of yet another long life, to the 1760s. The recent favorable conclusion to the French and Indian War had brought 80 years of conflict to a close and secured the colonial frontier. Yet when England tried to recoup the expense of the war through taxation, the colonies seethed with a directionless discontent. Immigration from the Old World, immigration across the Appalachians, and colonial trade arguments all rose sharply. As debtors' prisons bulged, middle-aged people complained of what Benjamin Franklin called the white savagery of youth. Middle-aged orators, peers of the fiery young preachers of the circa 1740 Great Awakening, summoned civic consciousness and organized popular crusades of economic austerity. The youth elite became the first to attend disciplined church schools in the colonies rather than academies in corrupt Albion. Gradually, colonists began separating into mutually loathing camps, one defending and the other attacking the crown. Sound familiar again? During each of these periods, Americans celebrated an ethos of frenetic and laissez-faire individualism, a word first popularized in the 1840s, yet also fretted over social fragmentation, epidemic violence, and economic and technological change that seems to be accelerating beyond society's ability to absorb it. During each of these periods, Americans had recently achieved a stunning victory over a long-standing foreign threat, Imperial Germany, Imperial New Spain, alias Mexico, or Imperial New France. Yet that victory came to be associated with a worn-out definition of collective purpose, and, perversely, unleashed a torrent of pessimism. During each of these periods, an aggressive moralism darkened the debate about the country's future. Culture wars raged, the language of political discourse coarsened, nativist, and sectional feelings hardened, immigration and substance abuse came under attack, and attitudes toward children grew more protective. During each of these periods, Americans felt well-rooted in their personal values but knew.
Huh?
Come the boys come over.
They were just over here last night. If you want to call on Mama's phone and she says it's okay, they can come over. Daddy's gonna go for a walk in the woods.
What? I don't want to do that.
You don't? Well, you stay here then. Okay? Where'd this guy go? There might be bugs. Probably not in the wintertime, sweet girl. Okay, let's finish this paragraph. I read like 50 books at a time because I ADD jump all over the place, but I always eventually finish them. Sometimes it takes me years, sometimes decades. Still working on the Brothers Karamazov. I think I started that in 2008. We'll finish it one day. The Onion had a great satirical piece about how the Brothers Karamazov ends on the page where most people quit reading. The movie does. It's like ends on page 162. Some argument about a Russian family. I don't have a good sense of where they are. I guess they're in the yellow circle, probably.
Yet that victory came to be associated with a worn-out definition of collective purpose, and, perversely, unleashed a torrent of pessimism. During each of these periods, an aggressive moralism darkened the debate about the country's future. Culture wars raged, the language of political discourse coarsened, nativist, intersectional, feelings hardened, immigration and substance abuse came under attack, and attitudes toward children grew more protective. During each of these periods, Americans felt well-rooted in their personal values but newly hostile toward the corruption of civic life. Unifying institutions, which had seemed secure for decades,
Well, that was
now
easy.
felt ephemeral. Those who had once trusted the nation with their lives were growing old and dying. To the new crop of young adults, the nation
Second
hardly
and
mattered.
first.
The whole Res Publica seemed on the verge of disintegrating. During each of these previous third turnings, Americans felt as if they were drifting toward a cataclysm. And, as it turned out, they were.
I got this ebook version. It's in PDF's easier to find where I am. They were. The formatting's not perfect.
Turned out, they were. The 1760s were followed by the American Revolution. The 18...
That's a good place to stop. Got this from the Internet Archive, I believe. Copyright's such a goofball concept. You can just Google it, PDF, and download it in 3 seconds. I don't know how it's copyrighted anymore. Technology has made that a goofy concept. Okay, I want to see... I read the first 2 volumes of Oechelon's Sociology of Freedom. 1709-26. I don't know what the difference is between these two. Have any bookmarks in this one? Bookmarks? Nope. Have any bookmarks in the other one? Bookmarks. Volume 3 of Oechelon's Sociology of Freedom. No bookmarks in either one.
Oechelon's works make many intellectuals uncomfortable.
Let's just start at the beginning.
Oechelon's works make many intellectuals uncomfortable, because they represent a form of thought that is not only inextricable from action but also directly grapples with the knowledge that it is. David Graeber, author of Debt, The First 5,000 Years, Melville House 2011, Oechelon's writings, written in captivity, are in the tradition of the ideology of the PKK.
This is why I like Fortnite, because it's such a brainless game. It gives me a dopamine hit so I can listen to a really boring book. It works well for the ADD mind. I don't have a game.
Oechelon's writings, written in captivity, are in the tradition of the ideology of the PKK, a left national liberation movement that seeks to change its own society. However, Oechelon, apparently also one of...
Oh, here's the PDF. I'm gonna read this PDF one.
In ancient Greek philosophy, Kairos signifies the right time or the moment of transition. We believe that we live in such a transitional period. The most important task of social science in time of transformation is to transform...
Let's just start at the very beginning of this. Did I put a bookmark here? Nope. Alright, starting at the very beginning.
Oechelon's works make many intellectuals uncomfortable, because they represent a form of thought that is not only inextricable from action but also directly grapples with the knowledge that it is.
This book's 18 hours long.
David Graeber, author of Debt, The First 5,000 Years, Melville House 2011, Oechelon's writings, written in captivity, are in the tradition of the ideology of the PKK, a left national liberation movement that seeks to change its own society. However, Oechelon, apparently also one of those whose political thinking has been sharpened by the forced abstinence from daily politics, has succeeded in further developing his political thought in captivity. Thomas Smidinger, author of The Battle for the Mountain of the Kurds, PM Press 2019, Öcalan's plea to build a strong and complex self-organized civil society without taking direct action against the state is similar to Zapatismo in Chiapas. Finally, this calls to mind Karl Marx's realization:
see if it
an
works,
idea becomes material
'cause the
violence when it seizes the
Zapatistas
masses. And Abdullah
longer
Öcalan's
exist.
message has seized the masses in Kurdistan. Nicholas Bronze, historian and journalist, author of
Oh,
Partisan
Mr.
Einer Neuen
Promise.
Welt, Buchmacherei 2018. Where else would you expect to find a world-class political genius than prison? And I don't use the word genius lightly. Peter Limborn Wilson, author of Plowing the Clouds, City Lights 2001,
Is that
and
somebody
Sacred
that-
Drift,
in my
City
chat?
Lights 2001. Öcalan is the Gramsci of our
No.
time. Tamir Baran, author of The World Through Soccer, Roman and Littlefield 2014, and Beyond Soccer, Roman and Littlefield 2017. The sociology of freedom in ancient Greek philosophy, Kairos signifies the right time or the moment of transition. We believe that we live in such a transitional period. The most important task of social science in time of transformation is to transform itself into a force of liberation. Kairos, an editorial imprint of the Anthropology and Social Change Department housed in the California Institute of Integral Studies, publishes groundbreaking works in critical social sciences, including anthropology, sociology, geography, theory of education, political ecology, political theory, and history. Series editor, Andrei Gerbasic. Recent and featured Kairos books: Building Free Life, Dialogues with Öcalan, edited by International Initiative Practical Utopia, Strategies for a Desirable Society by Michael Albert in Against and Beyond Capitalism, The San Francisco Lectures by John Holloway, Anthropocene or Capitalocene? Nature, History, and the Crisis of Capitalism, edited by Jason W. Moore. We Are the Crisis of Capital, a John Holloway reader by John Holloway. Archive that, comrade. Left Legacies and the Counterculture of Remembrance by Phil Cohen. Re-Enchanting the World, Feminism and the Politics of the Commons by Silvia Federici. Autonomy is in Our Hearts, Zapatista Autonomous Government Through the Lens of the Tzotzil Language by Dylan Eldridge Fitzwater. The Battle for the Mountain of the Kurds, Self-Determination and Ethnic Cleansing in the Afrin Region of Rojava by Thomas Smidinger. Beyond the Periphery of the Skin, Rethinking, Remaking, and Reclaiming the Body in Contemporary Capitalism by Silvia Federici. For more information, visit www.press.org/blog/Kairos/The Sociology of Freedom. Manifesto of the Democratic Civilization Volume 3. Abdullah Öcalan, The Sociology of Freedom. Manifesto of the Democratic Civilization, Volume 3. Abdullah Öcalan. Copyright 2020 PM Press. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be transmitted by any means without permission in writing from the publisher. ISBN 978-162,963-710-5. Paperback. ISBN 978-162,963-765-5. Hardback. ISBN 978-162,963-773-0. Ebook. Library of Congress Control Number 2,019,933,020. Cover image, Perprick by Erkan Altuntas, oil and natural colors on canvas, 60 x 80 centimeters. Cover by John Yates. www.steelworks.com. Interior design by Brian Design. 10987654321 PM Press. P.O. Box 23912 Oakland, California 94623. www.press.org. Printed in the USA. Published with International Initiative Edition. International Initiative Freedom for Abdullah Öcalan. Peace in Kurdistan. P.O. Box 100 511 D 50445 Cologne, Germany. www.freeokalan.org. Original title. Oscarly Yuksazilajizi, first published in 2009 by Mesopotamian Verlag. Noise translation by Havine Gunzer. Contents forward 11.1 Preface 1.2 Introduction 6.3 Some problems of methodology 18.4 The question of freedom 27.5 The power of social reason 35.6 The emergence of the social problem 44 Defining the problem of historical society 46 The first major problematic stage of the monopoly of civilization 51 From Rome to Amsterdam 61 Eurocentric civilizations hegemonic rule 72 Social problems 82 The problem of power in the state 82 Societies moral and political problem 87 Societies mentality problem 91 Societies economic problem 94 Societies industrialism problem 98 Societies ecological problem 102 Social sexism, the family, women, and the population problem 105 Societies urbanization problem 110 Societies class and bureaucracy problem 117 Societies education and health problems 122 Societies militarism problem 125 Societies peace and democracy problem 128 7 Envisaging the system of democratic civilization 132 Definition of democratic civilization 135 The methodological approach to democratic civilization 143 A draft of the history of democratic civilization 154 Elements of democratic civilization 179 Clans 179 The family 179 Tribes and Osiris 181 Peoples and nations 182 Village and city 184 Mentality and economy 185 Democratic politics and self-defense 189 8 Democratic modernity versus capitalist
It'd be funny to be taken to court by an anarchist publisher.
Modernity 195 The industrialism dimension of modernity
Not
and
very
democratic
dedicated to this
modernity,
concept.
204 The nation state, modernity, and democratic confederalism 208 Jewish ideology, capitalism, and modernity 221 The dimensions of democratic modernity 238 The dimension of moral and political society, democratic society 243 The dimension of eco-industrial society 249 The dimension of democratic confederalist society 256 9 The reconstruction problems of democratic modernity 266 Civilization, modernity, and the problem of crisis 270 The state of anti-system forces 283 The legacy of real socialism 285 Re-evaluating anarchism 291 Feminism, rebellion of the oldest colony 294 Ecology, the rebellion of the environment 300 Cultural movements, traditions revenge on the nation-state 303 Ethnicity and movements of the democratic nation 304 Religious cultural movements, revival of religious tradition 307 Urban, local, and regional movements for autonomy 309 10 The tasks in rebuilding democratic modernity 312 Intellectual tasks 318 Moral tasks 335 Political tasks 345 11 Conclusion 361 Notes 375 Index 389 About the authors 398 Publications by
Sniping
Abdullah
well today.
Öcalan in English 399 Forward John Holloway It is a great honor to be asked to write this forward. One I do it with pride, for who the author is and for the movement he represents. I do it to express my support for
not
him in
seem
his
the same as
struggle
the
against
old
a terrible
sniper.
imprisonment and my support for the struggles
the
of the people
old.
of Kurdistan in their attempt to create a different world, a different way of living, in the midst of the most terrible violence. I do it to protest against the brutality of the Turkish state and of all the other complicit states. The book was written by Abdullah Öcalan in prison. Arrested illegally in Kenya by NATO forces in 1999, he has been incarcerated since then on the prison island of Amro. For much of that time he has been held in total isolation and frequently punished by having his books and pen and paper removed, in breach of basic rights stipulated in the Geneva Convention. In spite of this, he has succeeded in writing 5 volumes explaining his political ideas, volumes to be presented in his defense at the European Court of Human Rights, Hector. The present book is the 3rd volume, written in prison in 2008 and published here in English for the first time. Through all these years of imprisonment, Öcalan's ideas have been a major source of inspiration for the Kurdish movement in its struggles, centered on the province of Rojava in northeastern Syria, to create a different way of living, a form of social organization that they call democratic modernity. The danger in writing a foreword to a book written by such a towering figure is that one sanctifies him, saying simply how wonderful, thus contributing to the formation of a personality cult that is undoubtedly present in the movement itself. This is very clearly not what Öcalan wants. At several points in the text he makes clear that for him this is part of a dialogue, and that he is looking for reactions to his ideas. When I started reading the book, I was clear that I wanted to express my support but not at all sure that I would be convinced by the book itself. This initial attitude then gradually fell away and turned into a very different reading, one in which I was absorbed by the force of the argument. I say gradually, because, coming from Europe and Latin America, it took me a while to adjust to a different frame of reference and become engaged in an argument that is not about a world over there but critically and crucially about my world, our world, about our world and the possibility that we can still pull the emergency brake on the train of destruction and create something different. Öcalan's book is an important contribution to the dialogue of hope, a dialogue that is being conducted all over the world, sometimes by voices that are articulate and well organized, like the Zapatistas in southeast Mexico, often by groups resisting the depredations of mining companies or urban planners, or women fighting against male violence. Sometimes, it's just students who look up from their books and think, there has to be a way out, there has to be the possibility of creating a different world. As the dark around us grows, as authoritarianism and militarism push us closer to the precipice, millions and millions and millions of voices join in the dialogue of desperation and hope. There has to be a way out. There has to be a way forward. For Öcalan, hope lies in restoring the free functioning of moral and political society. Ch. 7. 152. This is the revolutionary task. The task of revolutionaries cannot be defined as creating any social model of their making, but more correctly as playing a role and contributing to the development of moral and political society. Ch. 7. 138. This moral and political society exists as a repressed substratum in all societies. The democratic civilization system, essentially the moral and political totality of social nature, has always existed and sustained itself as the flip side of the official history of civilization. Despite all the oppression and exploitation at the hands of the official world system, the other face of society could not be destroyed. In fact, it is impossible to destroy it. Just as capitalism cannot sustain itself without non-capitalist society, civilization, the official world system, also cannot sustain itself without the democratic civilization system. Ch. 7. 143. Moral and political society, as I understand it, is the gel of everyday life, the normally unspectacular comings and goings of people, the trust, the mutual support, the friendships, the loves, the sharing of food, the preparing of food, the washing of dishes and of clothes, the gossiping, the sharing and shaping of moral ideas, all those activities that are common to all of us, those activities that hold our lives together and constitute and reconstitute communities. But for the last 5,000 years, ever since the Sumerian Empire, moral and political society has been repressed and blocked by official civilization, the civilization based on power, on monopoly, on patriarchy, on capital, on cities. But this civilization of power has never succeeded in freeing itself from the moral and political substratum, however much it may claim to have done so. Without the capital and power monopoly, moral and political society is the natural state of society. All human societies must have these qualities from their birth to their decay. Slave-owning, feudal, capitalist, and socialist society molds are like clothes they hope to put on social nature. They do not express the truth. In spite of what they claim, there are no such societies. These societies, whose original state was moral and political, were unable to fully develop because they were continuously oppressed, exploited, and colonized by the capital and power monopolies. Ch. 7. 151-52. The civilization of power, then, is like a suit of armor thrown over moral and political society that hides and constricts and blocks its development, and that is now increasingly societal, threatening to destroy society completely. The history of moral and political society, or toward democratic civilization is a history of resistance, rebellion, and struggle for life. The history of democratic civilization, to a great extent, is the history of resistance, rebellion, and insistence on the life of the moral and political society of the tribes and assyrians in their struggle for freedom, democracy, and equality in the face of the attacks by the civilization. Ch. 7. 182. There is a beauty in this conception. Revolution becomes of course, we need a revolution, and, of course, we must do it. But, of course, there is nothing more normal, nothing more obvious. Revolution is woven into the experience and creativity of our daily lives. It is we who create and recreate, day in, day out, the moral and political society that is the substance of our everyday intercourse. It is we who confront the obstacles to that creativity every day. The fact that we have to go to work or prepare for exams or are barred from access to the means necessary to realize our creativity. We are all aware of the power civilization, capitalism, patriarchy, whatever we want to call it, that blocks our way. But, at the same time, we are rooted in a different sociality that gives meaning and direction to our lives. A moral and political sociality that resists and rebels, that pushes and pushes against its repression by official civilization. The resistance and rebellion are constantly changing pattern, refusing here, refusing there, pushing here, pushing there against the attacks that come constantly from the civilization of power. The of courseness of resistance and rebellion shifts as the attacks against us move and our own sensibilities drive in different directions.
I've been playing for 47 minutes. Let's try one more, maybe.
This is important, for, despite being locked up in isolation, his argument resonates strongly with current debates in all sorts of ways. Far from being a book relevant only to the Kurdish struggle, The Sociology of Freedom is an important contribution to current debates about capitalism, patriarchy, ecology, and the state. For Öcalan, the civilization of power is, and has been since the time of the Sumerian Empire, built on the enslavement of women and the subjugation of nature, and its organizational form has been the state. Hence and of course, women's struggles against patriarchy and the many struggles to transform the relationship between humans and other forms of life, and indeed the understanding of life itself, are and must be at the center of any revolution aimed at redeeming moral and political society. Revolution aimed at redeeming moral and political society. Hence and of course, the struggle is an anti-state struggle in its organization and aim. Its organization is based on the assembly and its aim is not, emphatically not, the creation of a Kurdish state but the liberation of Kurdistan and the world from the state as an oppressive form of organization. The implications of Öcalan's work are profound and exciting. It has an enormous influence on the Kurdish movement, reflected in the forms of organization and the leading role played by women in the struggle. And, beyond that, the resonance of his work with current struggles and debates throughout the world is truly extraordinary. To feel this resonance is to be pulled into debate with the author. As we read the text, we move through phases of agreement, enthusiasm, doubt, disagreement, perhaps even annoyance, as we would with any good, provocative author, as we would with Bookchin, by whom Öcalan is strongly influenced and whose ecology of freedom is the model for the title of the present work. Title of the present work at or Graeber or Negre or Wallerstein or Federici or many others. To respect an author is to criticize her. To read Öcalan uncritically just because he is the symbol of a great movement would be to put another lock on his prison door, to embalm him before he died. Even if we know that this forward and other texts may never get through his prison door, we have to engage with what he is saying. Precisely because of the enormous admiration that I feel for someone who has dedicated his life to trying to change the world and has had such an influence on an amazing movement of change taking place in the most awful conditions. Precisely because of that, I feel drawn into debate, into saying wonderful,
What's
but
that?
perhaps
Well, maybe. I'm streaming this. Red papaya black tea. You're not doing anything wrong. I figured if I was gonna play, I may as well record it. Fortnite with revolutionary literature. It's the only way to play Fortnite. Get our reactions ready.
My own doubts center on the questions of historicity, negativity, money, and market,
I'm not good
working
at
class, nation. The constant references in the book to Sumerian civilization, to Babylon and Assyria, to the Zoroastrian tradition, certainly extend my thinking into unexplored areas, but at the same time make me feel that there is a danger of losing sight of the urgency of our situation. Perhaps there is a wider tendency. One thinks of book genre of David Graeber's Dead, the first 5,000 years 3 to shift from the analysis of capitalism to a much longer perspective, to see capitalism as just the latest phase in the development of patriarchy, for example. Certainly, Ocalan is right to draw our attention to the continuities of domination, but perhaps our immediate concern needs to be with the specific form of domination that is driving us toward our destruction. Perhaps we have to say yes, but the official power civilization that dominates in the world today has a name: capitalism. Capitalism has its own dynamic and its own fragilities and vulnerabilities that are quite distinct from, and infinitely more destructive than, those of the Sumerian civilization. By capitalism, I understand not an economic system but a totalizing system of domination and resistance that includes, crucially, the subordination of women and the exploitation of nature, but has its own fragility based on its dependence on us, i.e., on the conversion of our activity into abstract, value-producing labor. This specific dependence fragility has to be central to any development of a sociology of freedom. The long historical approach can lead us paradoxically into an ahistorical idealization of the resistance, of our resistance. Moral and political society, which Ocalan sees to be the center of our resistance and our hope, cannot stand outside the system of domination. It is inevitably penetrated by the power civilization, capital, that dominates it. Again, Ocalan stands in the center of international debate, for here in Latin America too there is a tendency to idealize the community, especially the indigenous community, as a source of hope standing outside the system. This can easily lead to a romanticism but also to a dangerous dichotomy between inside and outside, reminiscent in some ways of Marcuse's one-dimensional man, for a very
I'm
different...
constantly trying to figure out if this is a legit work or CIA programming against Marxism-Leninism. But you gotta read it to make up your own mind. So we're gonna keep reading it. There's a lot of references to hashtag woke stuff in here. But there's a grain of truth in it. Yes, sweet girl. What are you doing? You want to sit on my lap?
Outside, ruminant.
You want to sit on my lap? Okay, hang on. Hang on.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm playing this.
You want to play this game? Let Daddy play one more, okay? This is my last game. I'm streaming it. You want to talk to everyone? Say hi.
Derek.
Derek? You think Derek's on there? Maybe he's out there listening.
Hello, Derek. Derek. Derek.
How about Uncle Adam? You think he's listening?
Huh?
You want to say hi to him?
Yeah.
Say hi to him.
But I can't hear him.
No.
Hi. 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 Hi.
They're not there, baby, but I'll send it to them. They'll think it's sweet that you thought of them. Uh-oh. Whew, that was close for Dad. Game is Sissy playing? Do you know?
Pots.
Pups? What is pups?
So I think a new game.
Sounds like Pokemon almost.
Oh, I think he's watching something. Yeah, watching.
Oh, okay.
This is
Keep pressing my jump button. You're a big help. Ooh, how'd you do that roll? That was cool.
do what wall?
You rolled on the ground. Here, let me see this real quick. See what this gun does. Oh, sweet girl. Hello. Love you big time. I don't know if I want to keep this laser or not.
Dad,
What's that, baby?
why do you have no clothes on?
I'm wearing my bathrobe.
It's warm in your bathroom.
Is it?
Mhm.
You're
Why
funny
is
about
it called bath?
Why is it called a bathrobe?
Uh-huh.
Because you put it on when you get out of the bath.
But we have a shower.
We do. When you get out of the shower, I guess you could call it your shower robe. But most people call it a bathrobe.
Yeah.
It's like wearing a blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sweet pie.
Can I also change my person?
Change your person when you play? You bet. This is Daddy's last game, and he's gonna go for a walk. And you can change your person. We'll put it in.
Can I have the controller?
Uh-huh, of course. Of course. Did you go to Sunday school today?
Huh?
Did you go to Sunday school today?
Yes.
Was that fun? What did you learn about?
And I had sleepover.
I know, you had a sleepover at Nana's. Did you learn about Jesus at Sunday school? What was the lesson about today? You remember? Maybe I'm about to fight somebody. Ooh. How much? Too much.
think 20.
Yeah, I think he had at least 20.
Wait, I think 40.
I think he had 40 health. That's a lot of health.
So like, you count to 40.
Oh, there's a guy way over there. So. Do not like the sniper that recalibrated it or something. Does not work how it used to.
My computer doesn't know your name.
There, I got one. My computer doesn't know my name. Could be. Got a couple people there.
Go.
Let's go take their stuff. I'd rather have this bat than this laser. I don't understand this laser at all. A train with a box on it. Just gonna come through this hole.
Oh, look at the little guy.
Little furry guy.
You wanna get him?
Maybe we should. There's a train.
How did it fight?
I don't know, they did. Oh, this guy's gonna fight him too. Let's see if I can fight him first. You got him. Thank you, Soul. Give me a round of applause. I don't like the bat as much as the shotgun, I don't think. Somebody shot it. Oh, got him.
Got the bike. Get the bike.
Wish I could ride the bike, that'd be cool, huh?
But you can now only ride.
I thought I got that guy like right here, but I don't see any of his stuff. $15 people left. Port City. This seems like a nice city. A city by the sea. A seaport. so.
See? That's so deep in you. Just jump in the water. Just jump in the water.
Which one of these I like better?
Just jump in the water.
Okay.
Just jump. It's really deep.
Red mountain. Let's see some of these already. Let's not go there anymore. Let's go to these fields. What is that? It's like a radish or something. Shoot. Tired.
I'm just waiting.
You're bored?
I'm waiting.
I'm waiting.
I know. Done with this game.
Almost. There's 7 people left. You want to cheer for Dad? Maybe he'll win. 5 people left.
Uh-huh.
You want to play with the controller?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
With one people. One people.
You want to play by yourself?
Mm-hmm. Dum, dum. Dum, 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 dum. That looks like a fancy restaurant.
Kinda does, huh? Just hoping I get someone's position. Four people left.
watch that all the time.
Sneak, nobody can see you on the radar. One guy left. Alright, we lost Soph.
Between inside and outside, reminiscent in some ways of
Focus, 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 focus. Alright. Come on. I even use that as well as use this. Come on. Come on. What are you doing? Run. Yes! That's the way to go out. Woo! Like, subscribe, send me all your money. God bless you, everybody. Have a good Sunday.